Yes, as Ben said, my name is Kerri Miller. I'm a Ruby developer from Seattle. I work for one of the sponsors of the conference, Nerd, over there, lower right on the side. And I'm also a lead instructor at Ada Developer Academy, where we're starting next. Thank you, somebody. Yeah, I'm really happy to say we had over 100 applicants for our first cohort. We've narrowed that down to 16 students that start on Monday. So we're really looking forward to that. Oh, PJ, Japan Droids. Yes. Okay. It's our favorite band of the moment. So how many people here have actually played poker for money? All right, everybody else, don't play with them. Now you know, you've identified the sharks here. Before we get started, I love getting questions, and I don't mind a little heckling. Go ahead, but we are short on time today, so we're trying to keep questions to the breaks. But I have tasty prizes. Well, not tasty, but I have financial bribes to come ask me questions. I'm sorry? Your prizes are so tasty. First, though, a disclaimer. This is a very basic sort of overview of gambling and statistics and game theory. I'm using very general lay terms and very simplified concepts to just really kind of just do a brief overview. There will actually be no code, and I'm not actually going to use the word Bayesian probability anywhere in my talk. Second, a disclaimer. Playing poker online and gambling outside of a jurisdiction where it's legal, highly, highly illegal. For the person who's going to ask me the question, your NCAA pool, also illegal, but nobody cares. Third, a disclaimer, actually kind of a serious one. Gambling addiction is a very real thing. Lots of people suffer from it. It's very quiet, but it ruins a lot of lives and a lot of families. So if you or someone you know has a problem with gambling, I really encourage you to seek help. I've taken way too much money from people who in the gambling world we refer to as money haters, and you should not be one of those people. So this is actually one of the first board games I ever had. It was a lot of fun. I hassled the Hoff frequently. But I grew up in a household where we played board games, card games, a lot of role-playing games. It was very, very competitive. Like that's what my family did on camping trips. We'd play cribbage and pitch and all these sorts of card games. And there's all these games that people won't play with me now. They won't play Scrabble with me. I don't think anyone's going to play Carcassonne with me after last night. Scrabble, I'm a terror at Scrabble. And so playing poker seemed like a very natural sort of thing to pick up. And in 2003, I was actually playing Dungeons & Dragons with at a friend's house who's a Google dev. And he had this whole wall of poker books. And I'm like, Brian, you got to tell me, which one of these books could I just go read and learn about poker? And so by the summer of 2003, I started going to local casinos in Seattle. And that was right about the time that this guy, Chris Moneymaker, that is actually his name, sort of an everyman, random Joe kind of character, won the World Series of Poker main event, which is pretty much the premier prestige event in the poker world. He got into the tournament. It's normally at $10,000 just to sit at a table. He got in for $33. And poker exploded. It became everywhere. And I'm sure you've seen poker on TV and commercials and whatnot. It's because of this guy. So poker was getting hot, and I found I had a natural talent for it. Winning came very easily, and I was making a little bit of coin. A couple years later, I burned out on development. I burned out like a lot of us do, and I just said, fuck this. I'm out of here. And I went down to California to visit a friend who is a professional poker player. And I just said, I'm going to go down to LA and play poker for a couple of weeks and just kind of figure out what the hell I want to do with my life and my career. That was about a year. So I didn't get rich over that year by any stretch of the imagination, but I managed to pay the rent on my place in Seattle. And I paid for all my traveling and hotels and food and gas and things. It was a really great experience on the road. And eventually, over that year, I came to find out that, you know what? This is not what I want to do. I am actually a developer. I am an engineer, and that's what I want to be doing. You've probably all heard the saying that the lottery is a tax on people who can't do math, and it's really true. Although there is a special case where you actually can make money on the lottery, at least statistically speaking. But for the most part, anytime you're playing a game of chance of any kind, where the outcome is based on a coin flip, where it's completely random, you can't win. You cannot win all that at all. In order to win, you have to find these coin flips where you actually have an advantage. So in the poker world, we talk a lot about coin flip situations a lot. So say you come find me at the break and you say, let's flip coins, Kerri, and every time it comes up tails, I'll give you $1, and every time it comes up heads, you give me $1. And that's great. We can do that all day long. And the longer we do it, the more statistically likely it is that we will come out even. Does that seem right to everybody? Does that check my math? Okay. The trick is, though, that if we went into this sort of situation, tails, you get $1, heads, I get $1.10. I will still do that all day with you, and you'll go broke. And this is exactly how casinos operate, right? They have little teeny tiny advantages and everything. And you can think that you've got the perfect system for blackjack or craps or roulette or whatever, but it doesn't matter. The casino is always at least a 52% favorite to your 48. So they get 52 cents, you get 48 cents. You'll have nights where you do good, nights where you do bad. The longer you play, though, the more likely you are to go bankrupt. Which leads me to actually share with you, because this is the first time I'm giving the talk, this is the first time I'm giving out this advice. I actually have come up with a way to beat the casino at blackjack, and I'd like to share it with you. You can all tweet about this. This is Kerri Miller's Guide to Winning Blackjack. The first step. Exactly. I mean, come on. Blackjack's a game where you can get kicked out of the casino just for being smart, right? For just watching the cards go by and understanding how you bet. So the casino's discouraging you. They want their little percentages. So mathematically speaking, you can't beat these games at all. You can play 100% optimally, the perfect strategy, and you're still behind. So it's all entertainment, right? All this gambling and fun. It's just fun, and kids get tax money and things like that. But the casino's hand is always on the scales, except for two places in the casino. One of those is the sports betting area, and I could talk for an hour about that, about sports betting, but I want to focus on poker because that's really my first love and passion. Who here does not know the basic rules of poker? Okay, we got one person, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'll go over them real quickly. Oh, by the way, who here does not like participating in talks by raising your hand? One person? Okay. So the basic game that everybody plays these days is called Texas Hold'em. Every player is dealt 2 cards face down, and we do a round of betting. And after that's finished, the dealer deals out 3 cards face up. These are so-called community cards. And the goal is to make your best 5-card hand. So using the 2 cards in your hand plus any that are open up on the table. So now that we've dealt out 3 open, we have a round of betting. Another card comes out called the turn, or 4th street, and there's a 3rd round of betting. And then we have 5th street, or what is often called the river, because I guess you fall into the river if you go too far out on the casino boat. And there's a final round of betting. And the winner, who has the highest ranked poker hand, scoops in the pot, except for a few dollars for the casino. And this is how the casino makes money in the poker room. They just take a couple dollars out of every pot. Fat and really bad drinks. So if the goal of this is to find an edge, how do you know when you actually have an edge in this situation? How do you know when you're ahead? I really look for a lot of inspiration in one of my personal heroes back from the 80s. Most of you know me know I totally patterned my life on this guy. So gamblers, we never take a bet without an edge, real or perceived. We have to think that we've got some kind of information, because having information and the ability to gather information is gold. It's what gets you ahead. Because unlike a game of Go or chess, where you can see the position at every piece on the board, and you know every single move, your opponent's options are very, very limited. Poker is a game of incomplete information, where we just have little tiny blips of data that come in. How did somebody bet? How did they hold their hand? What are they looking at? Did they give a big speech before they made a bet? We have lots of sayings and heuristics for understanding these things. We still operate in this fog of unknownness, fog of uncertainty. And so we talk about poker as a game, as a conversation between blind opponents that are dancing around in the dark, trying to find each other. Every new card that's exposed becomes this new data point, and we like pounce on it. We try to pick it apart. There's about 80 different ways we can take this new data point and understand it and put it into a different context, because we're trying to assemble a story of what's going on in the darkness. To me, it feels a lot like Agile in a way, in that we have that initial like, well, here's the project, and you start working, and then the new requirements come in every day or every sprint. You change things up. This is how we deal with these sort of worlds of incomplete information. Every time you play a hand differently from the way you would have played it, if you could see all your opponent's cards, they gain, and every time you play your hand the same way you would have played it, if you could see all their cards, they lose. That is the unifying fundamental theorem of poker, and it's the only one true thing that we can say in this whole like swamp and morass of impossibility and incomplete information. The person who can gather more information about the situation or can induce their opponent to make mistakes and play incorrectly will win the most money. So it goes back to this idea of information and what do you know? What do you think you know? And how much can you trust yourself to know these things? This also means that there's no solution for poker. It turns out there's no unexploitable strategy, because every time you adjust to beat your opponent, rock beats paper, another strategy comes along. Scissors beats paper. Lizard beats scissors. Spock beats lizard. Claw. Goes on and on. There's like there's a counter for every attack and an attack for every defense. Code is a compromise. Every commit we make is a decision. That one approach, technology, or architecture is better than another. We decide that. We pick Postgres over Couch or JRuby over Rubinius or whatever we want to do that week because we feel that we're gaining a benefit. We're saying that maybe this is good, maybe this is bad, but we're also incurring a weakness at that moment because that item itself has its own strengths and weaknesses. There are no perfect solutions, there are only choices to be made, and we have to believe that in our current situation that we have the best information we have and that we're making the best decisions. And we also have to have the empathy to allow others to make those choices as well. I may not understand why you want to use Erlang for your website. That's cool, you could do that. I don't understand it, but you are making that decision that you think it's the best thing. But back to poker. We navigate this uncertainty by applying a variety of techniques to logically understand the value of the hand. We look at the two cards that we start with. We use a lot of aggression to steal momentum and to set up interpersonal dynamics, like I'm puffing up to be bigger than you, and so you're a little bit weaker and meeker maybe, or maybe I'm standing up to you because you're a bully, and now you're going to try to come back at me, and it's levels and levels and levels. And also position. Where do you sit at the table? The way that money flows around the table, because if you act after somebody, you have more information than they do because you have another data point, or maybe multiple data points. And if you did just these three things, if you went down to a casino tonight and you just kept these three things in mind, you would win, almost guaranteed. But this is just the beginning, because it's easy to be a beginner. When you have knowledge that allows you to be relatively successful on a consistent basis, that's great. However, poker is an arms race. It's very much like the technology world, that something new is always coming along. And so you have to arm yourself with the skill set to be able to evaluate new technology that comes along, new tactics, new strategies, and new ideas, and be able to recognize them and apply them to your world. And so in poker, we extend our landscape. We continue to optimize the amounts that we bet, depending on the situation. We calculate whether or not we're risking enough, or excuse me, there's enough to be won versus what we risk. And also that if we don't get to our hand, or if we make our hand but we still lose, what are those odds? There's a lot of statistical noise in here. And so then we add more skills to the mix, things that are more at the interpersonal level. Somebody asked me, if I can always, narrow down somebody's hand to like two specific cards, or if I can read, look into someone's soul. And I can't do that at all. No poker player really can. What we do is we narrow down the possibilities that you have. So I know that you like these kinds of cards in this kind of situation, and you're sitting on the north side of the table, and it's a Thursday, so you're going to play these four different versions of your hand. And so we're thinking on this level of what does my opponent think I have? Because it's not just enough to say, I have these two cards. What do I think my opponent has? But then what does my opponent think that I have? What does my opponent think that I think they think I have? And now you're into Princess Bride territory. And you could really outthink yourself, especially if you're playing against a beginner. And this mirrors a lot of the times where we're trying to explain something, a concept or an idea to somebody who is a ranked beginner. And it's very difficult because they don't even have the vocabulary for understanding it. We're thinking at this level, it's way outside, and you have to be just one level ahead of your opponent, ahead of your student, ahead of your coworkers when you're explaining things. So you do all this stuff, and you've honed your ability to soul read somebody so that it doesn't even matter if they're wearing glasses and a hoodie. You get them. You understand all their motivations and responses, but the problem is they're still people. And so they'll surprise you. So you better have some backups. Have some contingencies. So this is a ton of things to keep track of, and in some ways it reminds me of Rails. Somehow it all just works. So with all of these different ideas and all these different ways that you have to think about and keep in your brain when you're playing the game, and some of these are conflicting. Like there's math and logic, and there's people, and there's table service, and remembering like, is that guy drinking? Is his hand shaking because he's nervous? Or is his hand shaking because he didn't take his heart medicine? Like, you got to keep all of these things in mind and the vast history of every hand you've ever played with all of these people at the table. And so that's why whenever you ask me a question about how you should have played a particular hand of poker, I don't know. It depends. And this is kind of a joke in the poker world. You know, you can ask somebody, is it raining? You know, it depends. In the words of one of America's great poets, every hand's a winner and every hand's a loser. Come on, you can't reference poker without Kenny. Come on. Context is extremely important. Without it, there's simply no way to understand whether a decision is correct or incorrect. In poker, there are hands that are generally considered marginal at best. However, in the right situation, they become powerhouses of profit. While others might discard that particular hand, if you're trained enough, you can recognize the value of the particular situation that this hand is going to apply to. It's like having a specialty tool. Like, I've got this weird screwdriver that's got like 5 little lobes on it. It doesn't fit anything in my house, but it fits the screws on my MacBook Air. So again, how do you do this? How in this world of imperfect information do you know that you're holding a winner at the table? Like literally, like how do you know this hand is going to get better or you're holding a winner? You can try to figure out poker odds by brute force. However, there are 2.1 billion hand combinations, 7-card hand combinations starting with 2 cards out of the deck. I ran it in 193. It took about 5 minutes to calculate all 2.1 billion. Davey, I think my algorithm might have been oh and bang, something. Even after the flop, after the first 3 cards are revealed, we still have over a million combinations, which only takes a quarter second. That's a computer, right? It's a computer. And so human poker players, we memorize common situations, design patterns for recognizing these cards feel this way, or we say like a board is wet or dry, or it has a texture or something. We recognize these situations. We also have some heuristics. We have the law of 4 and 2. We count the number of outs, the number of cards that remain in the deck that will improve our hand. So there are 52 cards in a deck of cards. We've seen 2 have been dealt to us. 3 more have been placed face up on the table. That means there are 47 cards left. We have, say there's 1 card left to come that will improve our hand. That means we have 2 trials at it, and then you get to this sort of multiplication. It's a little bit fuzzy. It's not exact math. I wouldn't, create your winning system on that. But if you're just playing on a Saturday night, this is a really good system. This was come up by, the person who came up with this is Phil Gordon, and one of the professional poker players. He plays in like the Seattle startup poker games all the time. So early in my poker career, I was watching a friend play poker online, and he was playing like 5 different games at once, and he was playing Scrabble with us. He's a mad genius. And he lost this huge hand. He lost large 4-digit sum in one hand. It was several times what it cost my rent in Seattle. And he said, it's okay. I usually win there. I usually win there. This turns out to be one of the super important themes of gambling and poker. It's this idea of expected value. It's the idea that we continue to make correct decisions over and over and over again. If we continue to flip that coin, getting that $1.10 for your dollar, we will eventually come out ahead, no matter how we fare in any specific situation, evening, week, or month, or even year, really. We will come out ahead. We just keep flipping that coin in the right way. In software, we write tests, right? But I don't know of anyone who's ever really come up with an accurate metric to say, one test equals this value, right? You can add 5 tests, and you don't really know what the value of those tests are. But we know that it is valuable, right? As a whole, as a gestalt, we expect to produce better code in the long run. That net effect, that code guided by tests, driven by tests, and confirmed by tests is objectively and confirmably better. And that drives us towards these best practices all around. This is Eddie Gaedel. He's the shortest baseball player to ever play. He had one at bat on April 19th, 1951. It was part of a publicity stunt, obviously. He was walked on 4 consecutive pitches, reached base, and replaced with a pinch hitter. And his contract voided immediately. So statistically speaking, Eddie Gaedel is the best baseball player ever. He always gets on base. You should give him $1 million bajillion, right? You can't be results-oriented. If you make a play and you lose, well, instinct tells you to assume that that particular play is bad, and you start to shy away from it. If you make a play and you win a ton of money, man, make it rain, right? You're the best player ever. So you have to look at things like sample size, and you have to look at your biases about how you're being confirmed positively or negatively. And you continue to evaluate your assumptions outside of the result, you begin to establish a little bit of control over that decision process. So thinking that, the results of 1 or 2 trials is indicative of the merits is why we get people to say things like this. Yeah, I tried that. That sucked. Yeah, that concurrency shit. That's crazy. Oh, you tried something once and now you know that it doesn't work? Yeah. That's how it makes me feel. Tilt is what poker players call this idea of going crazy. You go on tilt, just like a pinball machine. If you bang it too hard, right, it just shuts off. Poker is a game for teaching you about emotional self-control. So most of you who know me know that I'm still a work in progress there. I mean, I have red hair and I'm a Scorpio. It's kind of rough. When you lose self-control and you go on tilt, I've seen people spew money at the poker table. Life is unfair, and they're going to just shove chips in there, and they're going to force chance and chaos in their favor. It's not going to work. So things go bad. It's not you. Go for a walk. It's the code. It's not you. Don't worry about it. Poker is designed to push you into rage and frustration. It's really the PHP of gaming. So to get good at poker, you have to learn to deal with your internal struggle at the inherent unfairness of it all. You have to learn patience to accept that this long view of expected value is going to happen. But you're going to have bad days. You're going to have bad weeks. And sometimes, yes, actually on the face of it, your bad days outnumber your good days, but your good days are that good. They make up for all the bad days. You have to understand that even when you're a 15-to-1 favorite, sometimes that one is going to come in. 15 times you're going to win, one time, that guy's going to get lucky. And all you can do is tap the table and say, nice hand, and move on, and let it go. Keep focusing on that process rather than the results is crucial. And that's a lesson that every poker player struggles with. It's my favorite key. So the poker players in the room, how would you evaluate Queen Deuce Unsuited? Good? Bad? No claps for it? I happen to think that Queen Deuce Unsuited is the best hand in poker, and I will play it hard. I will play it hard. I also play 10-5 hard, unsuited. Because you can't make a straight without a 10 or a 5, right? And 2 suits in your hand, that means you have 2 chances at a flush. So, you're a winner. So maybe these are good hands. Maybe these are bad hands. It doesn't matter. But it's the irrationality of my belief in this, and I will defend it to the grave. I play these hands, but I'm totally irrational about it, and that's the problem. Because we all have these techniques and processes outside of poker in our regular daily lives and in our code that we believe in. Whether it's a favorite tool that's really in our way or a gem that's super buggy, but we just used it a billion times. How many people have used delayed jobs in the last year? Okay, so you probably had a reason, but a lot of people just use it because, well, that's what they first tried, right? A lot of people still using their first programming language because it works for them. They get it done. I'm working with a client who uses ASP, for 10 years because that's what they know. And that's fine. But it's something that limits your thinking and it limits your ability to innovate because you keep this one perspective all the time. It becomes an albatross that slows you down. And so in the words of William Faulkner, find your darlings and kill them. Find the things find your queen deuce, your 10-5, that are really slowing you down and throw it away. Poker players refer to these sort of suboptimal plays that we make as leaks, as if we're literally leaking money out of our pockets all the time, right? And so we find these leaks in our game by being super obsessive about metrics, especially if you play online, where you can play up to 24 tables of poker at a time. They're super, super fast. You can get hundreds of hands of poker in every hour. And it's trivially easy to assemble databases of millions and millions of hands. You practically see every single situation that will ever occur at the poker table. So between that ability to flip this coin millions of times a year, and these tools that are now, because we're working in a computer environment, to be able to diagnose your play and really dissect them down to find every quantum of profit. I do mean every single thing. We have super optimized everything in the poker world. We have these tools in the programming community as well, and we should be using them. Why do we want to use them? Because no one is as good as they think they are. But by tracking our progress, by using metrics to understand success and where we should prioritize our efforts to improve, do we write particularly wet code? Do we write particularly complex code? Is there something about our code that just simply reeks? Do we have bad style? Using these tools can help us continue our upward trajectory towards some greater awesomeness. In the poker world, to be successful, you have to do this particular trick in your brain. You have to go to the table almost arrogant about your abilities. You have to believe that you can do anything and no one can beat you, and that everybody else is a fish and you are a shark. But at the same time, you have to obsessively self-analyze yourself to find these leaks, to find these flaws in how you approach the world. Do I bet enough in this spot? Do I bet too little? Do I fold? Am I too meek? You have to believe that you can do anything. You have to honestly also admit to failure. It's often said that the key to the game is playing the man, not the cards. I think Matt Damon said that. And it's true. Every decision is made within the context of the person you're playing against. For example, like I said, if I make a big bet at you, are you meek? Are you going to fold? Or are you a bully? And you're going to kind of bully me right back. In software, we too often forget, too, that our code is written within the context of a user or a client or other people. Because, right, code is written for other people. It's only incidentally meant to be run by a computer. There are real-life people using our code, and how they think and how they feel really matters. The most successful poker players are also the ones with the strongest social skills and empathy. And it's not just about reading people, it's about interacting with them. You have to sit at a table with 8 other people and try to get them to risk money in bad situations. And every great developer I know also has these great social skills and a dose of empathy. Don't buy into the myth that as programmers and nerds that we have to be these antisocial people who just don't understand humanity and social skills. These are things that you can learn. You can learn empathy. You can learn social skills. It's doable. I'm living proof. Frank Lance is the director of NYU's Game Center, and he's a Bakadimak at Zynga. He gave a talk at GDC recently about the games of poker and Go. And he talked at length about how poker trains you to see your opponent's hand as, quote, a smear of possibilities. I just love that image. It looks like there's peanut butter wiped across someone's face. And it's true. You begin to see the world when you're a poker player. You see the world as this series of overlapping probability fields. You come face to face with Bayesian logic. When everything becomes a possibility, we survive not by sorting the possible from the impossible, but by discerning the improbable from the probable. We hone our ability to see how we move from evidence through uncertainty to arrive finally at knowledge. And part of the beauty of this is watching our own minds wrap around a problem. Our brains step through the discipline of applying logic to these imperfect knowledge situations. We become one with the act of discovery. It's absolutely beautiful. So I love debugging. I love debugging. It's so great. Something happened. I have proof of that, and how do I get there? I'm moving through this blind swamp, and eventually I build a walkway that repeats to get me there. We become explorers of leaks, not just in our game, but in our personalities. Why am I obsessed with Queen Deuce? Well, I'll tell you, it's because I won my first poker tournament with it. I also made my first royal flush with it. So I love it. Why do I like delayed jobs? It was the first asynchronous-esque worker I used on Heroku. Lance spoke about the tradition of Go as a martial art, and he considered poker in this talk, and by extension all gaming as the same. He proposed a modernized set of rules for studying games based on some traditions of the martial arts. Interestingly enough, these are the same emergent practices of the poker community. And much as discipline learned in the martial arts ideally transcends the dojo and enters your life. Martial arts always talk about that, right? Like the martial arts is a way of life, not just a fighting style. So too do these rules end up expanding to fill your life outside the game. And soon everything becomes a calculation of motivation and expected value, of desire and leaks and edges and fronts and weakness strong as weak. But it's not a zero-sum game against the world, unlike poker. It becomes a positive-sum game against yourself. And so what's interesting is that you can apply these same rules to development. Because why can't our software development practices be a sort of martial art? When I returned to development from playing poker, I found myself applying the same sorts of approaches. And I discovered that I wasn't burned out in development. I was burned out in my approach to development. Ultimately, poker, like so many careers and hobbies I've partaken in, has brought me pleasure in the simple act of exploring and knowing and learning and breaking and failing and succeeding. And it's tough sometimes to see the connection between simple techniques and ideas and the mastery of the skill and application. Because we're taught that we get ahead by working hard. How do you work harder at code? Type faster or harder? No. You can't do that at poker either. You can't shove your chips in and win more or win better. And so it's working hard outside of the work itself that becomes the goal and what drives you towards this greater success. That's why I always encourage people to explore your pursuits that are outside of technology that aren't necessarily shared by your day-to-day peers, because you're going to learn to have that greater perspective upon your own work that comes from having a diversity of thought and influencing your life. They say in poker, they say that poker is a hard way to make an easy buck. And I would say that is equally true about every single field. I'm Kerri Miller. That's my Twitter handle. That's my everything handle, actually. List of things I do. Thank you so much.